Oh my God.
No, don't you hate it when you lose your dongle? Scuba Obsessed, the weekly podcast. We talk about all things scuba diving, from cool new gear to places a dive and scuba news. Scuba Obsessed episode 500 is recorded live June 24th, 2021. Welcome.
Where are the horns?
Welcome back to Scuba Obsessed. I'm Darrin Gilson, coming to you from the southwest side of the great state of Michigan. We're joining me this week. We have Mac, the dive mentor. How you doing today, Mac?
I'm doing pretty good. I was just thinking, what we could have done there is when you had that announcement, we could have had confetti come down all over your head.
Oh yeah.
We could do this over,
Yeah, we can do
really
that.
make it impressive.
Yeah. Why start now? They'll come to expect it.
Got you off topic with that, didn't I?
Well, here, Eric and everybody. He's got. You can't see it in the chat room. It doesn't show the GIF he's got, but he's got your favorite minion doing a party time dance. So that's some of the good stuff that happens in the chat room on episode 500. So let's see. I mean, normally I say something about the weather, but we've actually had some pretty amazing weather. But did you get the alert today that we had a flood warning?
No, I know. What was it? 3 days ago, I woke up to the rolling thunder of huge lightning, and then I got up and I was debating on how much and how many dents I'd have in my car from the hail. And that
See,
was
I didn't
about
get
1
hail
o'clock
here.
in the morning.
Yeah, my dad said they had hail, which he's only a couple miles north of me, and he's more your direction, so he had hail, but we didn't have any out here, which is good for the fruit crops, I'm betting.
Yeah.
But it was, they're calling for 5 to 6 inches of rain in the next couple days. Now, I don't know if that's
Really?
Yeah. I don't know if that's still going to be current or that was just today. People doing stuff. And then I'm looking. So what we were talking about before the show is I've been working on getting, one of the reasons I took today off is just to find an excuse to get things ready as my kids move on to their next college and apartments. But then also I'm trying to get the lower half of my house really set up for editing and recording. So I attacked the office, which really, other than during the pandemic when I was working from home, is really doesn't get much use. I come in here about an hour before the podcast. I do the podcast and then I leave, and that's about all use it gets. So as the time goes on, I was getting that hoarder path where, stuff that's not upstairs that needs to find a home finds a home. On our 500th episode, should I do a clutter cam? Because this is after it's cleaned up. It's still needs some care, but it's looking better. So the background, if you look at the background, let's see if I get both my fingers, not my head, but the background there, instead of the clutter in the darkened room, I've actually got things lit up. So should be a little bit brighter today. And then I'll be doing some more stuff. I've got some charts to hang up. I also got some green screen that will be dropping back there for different purposes. Now this, can you see this black spot there? What is that? Oh, here. There you go. This piece of tape hanging. I was convinced I had something on the wall. It was because I've got a light up there-ish. Gosh, it's confusing how it maps things. But there was a light up there, so I made like a little shield that shields it, and guess one of the tapes was dangling a little bit. Back to dangling again. So, but I'd like to thank everybody who's in the chat room. We have Eric and Derek who have shown up tonight. I'm sure we'll give everybody else a pass. They're probably doing some sort of diving or pretty busy activity with Michigan. This is the first day of being restriction free, other than nursing homes and schools.
And schools have graduated, so there's nobody in
Right.
school, right?
Other than robotics,
What
which
about
I'm
summer
doing.
school? I was going to say, what about summer school?
Summer school's in person in Berrien Springs, so and they still have to wear masks, which I'm sure is driving everybody in summer school nuts. We're still wearing masks for robotics meeting, even though we don't meet on campus. We follow the school rules. So I would like that to go away, because we're in a giant building and it's very well ventilated and we're social distancing. But I don't think they're under any, with school being out, I don't think they're going to adjust those requirements. So we'll probably see those sometime in probably end of August.
I was curious after the Indianapolis 500, where they did not have social distancing with the thousands upon thousands of people, if there were going to be an increase in COVID. I've not seen any. And one would think they'd cover that too. They'd be taking a look at the number of people, where they came from, to see if there's any kind of surge based on that.
I think if there had been a surge based on that, we'd have heard a ton. The fact there's nothing on it, probably we have to assume that nothing happened.
That's when, 2 weeks ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, Memorial Day weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, and they had one of the reasons why some of the outdoor stuff got lifted in Michigan early is, I believe it was the CDC had come out with a study where they hadn't found any significant number of cases that were being transmitted outside. So that was some of the reason for some of those restrictions being lifted.
You ever read The Satan Bug?
No, I didn't.
That's a good one. Want to get something to give you shivers?
Who wrote that? Do you happen to remember?
Oh, I can't remember. That's been years I read that. But they're working on a lab, like 5 stories under the ground with that many layers of security and protection. Of course, it got out.
Oh, one of mine that scared the crap out of me when I was a young kid was a Andromeda strain. I don't know, I was probably 7 years old or 8 when I watched that on TV, and that's what I learned. Spacemen are going to bring back bad things.
That could very well be.
Yeah. So that was that. The Delta variant. One bit of information I heard is that it was India. India is saying no, it's not us. But everybody's afraid of being stigmatized. But it's like, unless you let it out of a lab, who cares? I mean, who cares that it started in? You learn from it, you improve from it. I mean, there's a value in honestly finding out the location, so you can try and prevent it from not happening again.
Well, that and intent.
Yeah.
You always wonder if it was on purpose.
Yeah, certainly. So, yeah, so this is how we do our 500th episode. We have this first front section, which who knows, I may edit the whole thing out. I don't know. I'm still editing 499. I just got 498 up. That one was a little bit of a challenge because I had to do a little bit of editing because that treasure ship, the Republic, that video got us a copyright strike from YouTube. So I had to do a little bit of jostling. There's really no effect. You can put it out there. It's just they get to monetize it. And it's kind of like, damn it, I'm not letting you. I did the work. You don't get the money. So I did what we needed to do, get that in. And I think most people aren't going to notice anything significant from that. So before we get into Scuba the News, can you believe 500?
That's 11 years we've been working on this.
Yeah. I almost called Jim up today and said, hey, Jim, you need to come on. But I just, like everything else in life, you're just so busy, too damn busy. So, but we've got some good things coming up. I mean, we got 500. I can't say I'm going to do 1,000. I remember when we first started, I was thinking we get to, my goal was to get to 100. I said, we'll do 100. And I think we made 100.
Yeah.
Yeah, we made it past that. Well, let's go ahead and jump right on into the news. We don't have a whole ton of articles on the queue, but we do have some. So let's go ahead and cover those. And that's not the one we're leading off with. Here is the first one, our favorite topic almost for the last year. It seems like these modern shipwrecks, we can stretch those out for quite a while. The Golden Ray salvage effort includes charge to ballast steel. If the cutting chain continues to struggle with thick masses of steel inside the shipwreck Golden Ray and the St. Simons Sounds, the salvage team will turn into a backup plan that packs a little bit of a punch. The plan would include blasting the 2-foot thick section with steel obstacles with a contained and concentrated use of explosives, Unified Command announced Wednesday. The precise term for the product is low-hazard, flexible, linear-shaped charges. The device packs a certain amount of explosive RDX inside a foam casing. The resulting charge delivers precisely aimed blast that makes precise cuts through the steel obstacles, said U.S. Coast Guardman Michael Himes. TNT Salvage received the necessary permitting from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to employ such charges, Unified Command announced Wednesday. Use of linear-shaped charges also required NOAA approval. As of now, salvers continue to use cutting chain to tear through what is known as Section 3 of the ship. There are no immediate plans to use the charges, he said. The VB-10,000 resumed operations in Section 3 after midnight Wednesday using twin-hulled crane vessels, a system of winches, wires, pulleys, and a cutting chain up through the shipwreck along the designated cutting path. The path has been stymied by thick steel brackets, which secure interior decks to steel girders inside the Golden Ray. The fifth cut began May 6th, but the VB-10,000 had ceased cutting May 12th for maintenance due to equipment wear wrought by the 2-foot thick steel brackets encountered along the cutting path. But those shape charges, those are pretty impressive when you see some of those. I've watched some programs where they've used some of those shape charges. It's ridiculous how precise they can be and how far they can go.
Yeah. Do you know what RDX stands for?
No, I don't.
Royal Demolition Explosive.
So what
One would have thought it would have been more exotic than that.
Well, yeah, I was thinking it should be something a little bit fancier, but so it's just royal. What makes it royal?
I don't know. If the white powder, it's very expensive. I think it's called cyclonite, or the other one was HEXOGEN. My enunciation sucks badly.
Yeah.
But shape charges are really the way to go. We had those, God, back in the 70s even.
Oh, yeah.
Both in the military and when we used to dive.
Yeah.
Easy way to knock a tree down.
Yeah, because wasn't like some of the claymores and stuff were set up in a shape charge configuration?
Well, yeah, they're in a little semi-U, not a big U.
Right.
Projectile. Yeah, as long as you made sure that the sapper didn't come up during the night and turn it around on you.
Ooh.
Which they tried to do a lot.
Oh, yeah.
And that will will get your attention.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you got to remember to take the stop off when you go click, click. Otherwise, it doesn't work. So when you get really anxious and the adrenaline flowing, and you don't want to have a new guy because he's going to go click, click, and nothing's happening because the freaking safety's on. Oh. But anyway, we're deviating. Sorry about that.
Yeah. So we'll call this 500.5. We'll just continue. We'll hit them all. So let's take a look at this next one. No OSHA probe of a diver who died in a farm digester. Just dying in a farm digester doesn't sound at all good. Questions have been raised about the diver's equipment, temperature of the 1,000,000-gallon tank. Government safety inspectors will not be looking at the death last week of experienced Quad City scuba diver who failed to surface from a dive to repair a broken cable at the bottom of a 1,000,000-gallon anaerobic digester where cattle manure and food waste generated biogas. Bob Ben Zeiger, Jr., 54 of East Moline, died around 10 a.m. June 8th when he was unable to return to the top of the liquid of the tank at the Seavers Farm, family farm in Stockton, according to New Liberty Fire Chief Chad Peterson. As his fiancée was trying to pull him up, there were complications and he didn't service. Scott County Sheriff Captain Joe Caffrey said for whatever reason he relayed through the radio communication that he was taking his helmet off. So when she pulled the rope up, his helmet came up. The team of commercial divers from Chicago later recovered his body from inside the tank. The state medical examiner has done an autopsy, but has not yet have the results of the cause or the manner of his death. Because he was a self-employed contractor, he was exempt from OSHA inspection, Iowa OSHA Administrator Russell Perry said, and the farm, which had 10 or fewer employees, doesn't fall within the purview of the Worker Safety Agency. Therefore, the investigation will be closed with no further action, Perry said. The incident was originally described as happening in a manure tank, but it was one of the farm's 2 digester tanks where cow manure and food waste are used to create methane, which generate electricity and heat. The Seavers family farm digester, operated since 2013, is one of the 4 on-farm digester systems in Iowa. The same day the diver died, the governor signed into law a bill that allows on-farm digesters rather than open-air manure pits and animal feeding operations. Owner Brian Seavers did not return a text or call for comments on the death. He told the Gazette in April the temperature of the tanks is maintained between 99 and 105 degrees to encourage bacteria and microorganisms to break down the waste into biogas. There's some questions after the death what the temperature of the tank was higher when he went into it and filled the scuba gear and an oxygen tank. The oxygen tank. Peterson, the fire chief, who was one of the first emergency responders on scene, said the water at the surface of the tank was 120 degrees, which is too hot for a commercial diver brought in to recover the diver's body. We are not anticipating that kind of heat. We knew at that point in the time we had to do something different. Peterson, who was also a volunteer with the fire department, called a neighboring fire crew to haul in nearly 10,000 gallons of water from a nearby quarry to cool the tank. After they added the water, the foam at the top of the digester dissipated and divers could see the body floating about several feet of manure. Food waste solids at the bottom of the tank were able to make a recovery. They said it did not appear that he had on proper gear for diving into liquids contaminated with manure and food waste. It is a contaminated dive, so we use specialized suits with double seals, triple backup air supply, and communications. You have to have the right stuff. He didn't have any of that stuff. Benghazi was an experienced diver trained in the U.S. Army who had done commercial dives at offshore oil wells for 20 years, says his mother. More recently, he had completed diving at a nuclear facility on the Mississippi River. He did a lot in the river. If a barge got a rope caught in the prop, he would do that. He'd repair a hole in the barge itself. He had experience doing underwater welding. His primary job was as an independent contractor who installed insulation in windows and did other minor home repairs. His fiancée, Eliza Bisbee, who had been at the incident when it happened, said he loved golf and anything water, jet skiing, tubing, just floating and fishing. Hundreds of farmers and farm workers die each year from work-related injuries. The U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention reported the farm fatality rate is 20 deaths per 100,000 workers. And then they go on, they have some additional details, but not what we're looking for. What do you think was happening when he said, I'm taking off? I mean, if he said he's taking off his helmet, that meant that he had comms, because she wouldn't have been able to hear that otherwise.
Correct. I have not a clue. With any kind of experience, why the hell did he not have a harness, safety line? And, why would he even think about taking his helmet off?
Yeah.
We talked about that before. If nothing else, and you don't have air, dry drowning is better. It's easier to revive you.
Right.
I can't imagine trying to revive somebody who's been breathing that kind of mixture.
Yeah. Well, it took him too long to get. I mean, there was no chance of reviving him.
No,
especially at that temperature.
But he had the training to do it the correct way. So I'm really at a loss why he did that.
Want to make a quick buck. You know, you act as an independent diver. You know, he does windows and doors normally, and he's got the experience of a commercial diver. So he's, you know, that's probably paying what 4 or 5 times that he would have been made as a day laborer in construction.
I would probably think so.
Yeah,
A couple of times. Well,
now,
depend on the job.
it'd be nice if they said what they didn't think he had, because like I would, and it's not triple seals, but I would think you'd want, like, I've got a Viking. I mean, you know, and that, you know, that's got a hood, and then if you did a full face mask, you could conceivably have no skin coming in contact with water. Now, it's not triple seals. Wouldn't he have checked to see? I mean, wouldn't that have been his responsibility for the temperature?
If he's been doing nuclear work, the biggest hassle in nuclear work is the temperature. You're diving in the spent fuel pit or the transfer canal. It's warm. The water's warm. You've got to have some kind of cooling system. When we started, we didn't do it the first time. Then you realize, well, let's put an ice vest on. And then we started chilling the air. And there's a lot of different ways we learned to get the heat out. So, I mean, the visibility is good. Unless you hit a hot particle, you're not going to get the zoomies. I got less than my tender did. So with that kind of stuff, though, you're going to have a good suit, double seals on your exhaust valve of your helmet.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not diving in that in a full face. You're talking helmet. There's no way in heck I would go into a sewage thing without a full, a helmet and a good neck dam. I just don't understand, like you said, why he said he's taking his helmet off. That just does not make any sense.
Well, when I hear somebody saying they're taking their helmet off, that implies that there is something. Now, maybe he was more experienced than what I'm giving him credit for, but that just sounds like somebody panicking.
Well, 99 to 105 degrees, you got no business down there in that kind of environment if you don't have proper cooling. When we dove 80, 85, you tried not to do anything past that. I mean, it's not that freaking critical. You can fix it later. Get the temperature down and make sure you've got a cooling system. So I can't believe he's in a. Well, how about yourself? Would you put on your dry suit just the way it is on the boat in the summer day? How are you going to feel?
You'll be roasting. I mean, that's in the sun.
Can you imagine getting into 105-degree water to cool off?
No, you're not. You're not cooling off in that temperature. Yeah, that's not. Drowning is like the last way I want to go, which is kind of crazy thinking I'm a scuba diver. But I'm doing everything not to drown. I don't have superpowers. I can't breathe water. So, yeah. So be careful out there. I mean, and he had the training. Just think of what somebody without training. And
he only had one person with him.
Yeah. Well, and how much training did she have?
Yeah.
Well, and was that the instructions? I mean, if he wasn't had a harness, and say he had a legitimate reason to take, why would you take? What legitimate reason? You come up, I can't think of taking the helmet off in sewage is ever a good reason, and that's why I keep going back to thinking that there's something else going on. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's ambiguous. And she pulled the rope and the helmet came off. Where the hell was the rope?
Well,
what was it hooked to?
Well, and I'm wondering if she pulled the rope or did she pull was he doing surface applied air?
Well, it said scuba. That sounds like tank to me.
Yeah, but they also said oxygen. So, and I'm sure he wasn't, would you breathe 100% oxygen in a tank dive? I wouldn't think so. Live streaming is hard, and I've been watching some other people do live streams, and it makes me feel like I know what I'm doing because, people with There one person I follow has 1 million subscribers. He doesn't normally do live streams, but he's been doing live streams the last couple weeks, and he's had the same problems I had that we have. So this is not unique to us. Without hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of gear, we're going to run into this, which kind of explains, while we're here talking about this, why we have the workflow that we do, which is we do the live stream. And if everybody who's in the live stream can give it a like, that helps the YouTube algorithm, let people know that there's more of that. And then if you can come back and later when I post a live one, which is usually, it can be as short as a day, it can be as long as a week. But even if you've already seen it, if you can try and watch 10 to 15 minutes at least and give it a thumbs up. That helps us immensely, because YouTube's not going to do it up. And that's not, we're not doing this for YouTube. We don't make money off the YouTube. You have to have 1,000 subscribers and be doing ads. And, that's not our business model for this. Our supporters are through Patreon. It's direct support. You're our producers. You're not our product. So we're not making money off selling who you are. But it does help. We're trying to get the message out. So maybe this is a good point of the program to talk about, how you can support the program. Normally I do it at the end, but we'll do it here in the middle. You can support us by going over to Patreon. In Patreon, if you're enjoying the program, $3 or more gets you early access to the show notes. Any amount is appreciated. If you can't do that, we certainly understand. Tell a friend about the program. Go into your platform of preference. If that's YouTube, if that's Android, Stitcher, Shopify. Not Shopify. I said Shopify. That's what I do during the day. If Spotify. There's too many of these Fi stuff. Spotify, iTunes, Apple iTunes even. Give us an honest rating. Hopefully it's as many stars as they will allow. But if you do some sort of comment about how you like the show, that does get us more subscribers. And there's a certain percentage of subscribers. And it is about 1 subscriber for every 1,000 who listen to the program actually are Patreon sponsors. So there's a lot of people who got to get to listen to the show to get it to go and do things and improve the program, which hopefully you agree that we are improving it. We're going to start doing some guest spots. And just today, they are migrating our hosting for the episodes from our legacy platform to the new one. They started at 9 a.m., so I can't upload any new episodes till they're completed. I was thinking it'd be done by now, but when we started recording, they still hadn't got done. So, as with anything technology, there's always a little bit of a hiccup. And then I'm soon as that's done, and it might be maybe tomorrow, I am going to start redoing the website and getting that up to snuff. And then I'm also going to do some other things. So watch out, subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm going to do some kind of like an open source engineering community thing. And the first one is going to be an open source tethered camera, because we want to do some live streaming of dives underwater. And at least at this point, I'm planning on being a tethered camera. So that'll be something that we'll be open sourcing, making it available to everybody. So if you have a scuba diving podcast or another item, it could even be really think of it as a drop cam that you carry with you is really what we're going to be doing. But it's going to be something that's capable of 4K streaming and some other stuff. So let's do the next article. Let's see, what do I've got? Is this really the next one? Scuba divers rescued by ferry crews near Edmonds terminal. 3 scuba divers were rescued by a ferry crew near Edmonds terminal late Friday night, Washington State Ferry confirmed. A crew member from the MV Walla Walla noticed a scuba diver drifting under the Edmonds ferry dock around 11:45 p.m. Wow, that's they were doing a night dive then. The diver was being pulled by the tide, struggling to get back to the shore. Crews launched a rescue boat and found the other divers in the water struggling as well. The crew rescued 2 divers within the boat, and the third was floating, thrown a life ring from the ferry. The 4th diver was able to make it back to shore without assistance. South County Fire gave divers medical attention once rescued. That could be scary.
At night, 11:45 at night, in strong current, I wouldn't like that at all.
So it almost tells me that they weren't paying attention to tides, because most divers, especially Washington, that's going to have a high tidal flow there. So you're going to have incoming tides, slack tide, and then outgoing tide. So maybe they lost track of time. They were in water longer than they thought. They looked at the wrong table. I don't know what they did, but that is not a good time to be there in the water.
I don't believe that you're going to see anybody at 11:45. Must have spotted lights or strobe.
Well, if you were planning on a night dive, because some people like to go, do octopus dives. Would you do those at night? Are those... Well,
we do night dives, but I mean, I usually have a tank light on the tank,
yeah.
so all the people can see me. I have a light that I have myself. I've got my flag, which means I got a strobe or a light on it. So I'm just curious. I don't know how they do their drift dives in that area.
No, I'm not sure.
Especially around a shipping area.
Well, and then when they show the photo of the vessel, let me pull that back up here.
That's a pretty darn big thing.
Yeah, so this is the vessel that went and picked them up. And they sent out...
How did they see them? Where were they at to see the divers?
Well, I mean, you look there, they got a high bridge, so you've got a great vantage point, but unless they were running with lights, maybe they had some lights on them.
Well, if you're under the ferry dock, how in the heck did they see them?
I don't know. Or maybe they had gotten to the ferry dock. Is that possible that they were at the ferry dock and then noticed divers struggling along the dock?
Or the people on the walkway securing the lines for the... I don't know if there's a lot of the information they didn't give us, but...
Yeah, it says the crews launched a rescue boat and found other divers in the water struggling as well. So that was the boat that they were on, but that wasn't the boat that went and rescued them. So I'm guessing they had to have gotten to the dock, and then it just had to... I mean, that's all that seems practical. Because you look at how high they are, and unless you're doing some sort of distress signal and flashing the lights, because there's got to be a lot of other lights. Because these docks, especially a ferry, you've got lights on it, so it's going to be hard to, even with lights in the water, to see it. So it's good for them to spot them.
They lucked up.
Yeah.
Like to hear their after dive briefing.
Yeah.
The first words will be, "We ain't doing that again."
I think that's probably that's it. You just let's learn from it and not do that.
Yeah, I'd love to hear their version of it.
So, this is good to know, especially if you're a cabin boy. British ministers are claiming technology makes maritime cannibalism obsolete. So of all the things to be made obsolete, I'm thinking cannibalism is one that you may want to. And they're saying that the main beneficiaries of these are cabin boys. The British government ministers has claimed that cannibalism on the high seas should be a thing. Should be a thing of the past, as modern navigation and safety technology has made it very unlikely sailors will find themselves in circumstances where they want to eat each other. And we're talking PG rating, not other ratings. So this hopeful statement came from a debate in the House of Lords on human rights at sea when Baron Mackenzie of Farmingwell Gate stood to ask the question of Charlotte Burgoness V. of Norbiton, the Conservative government's parliamentary undersecretary of the state for transportation. The debate began when Baroness Vera, answering questions about the government's policy regarding many merchant sailors worldwide who found themselves stuck in vessels thousands of miles from home, sometimes without pay or current conditions due to the effects of the COVID pandemic. Baron Mackenzie then somewhat derailed this worthy discussion by referring to the case of R.V. Dudley and Stephens, a famous criminal case in British law from 1884, which concerned a pair of shipwrecked sailors stranded in a lifeboat with an ailing cabin boy who decided to kill and eat him to save themselves from starving. Which you would normally do, of course. The Lords, I recall, is a young student of law many years ago, the late 19th century case, R.V. Dudley's stepsons Mackenzie Ben began, and if succumbing to the revere about distant, happier times, he continued. This involved a shipwreck that caused a number of sailors to take to a lifeboat. As a result of hunger and thirst, they alleged that it was necessary to kill and eat the young cabin boy. Why am I laughing? Just in order to survive. The common law defense of necessity succeeded at their trial, but was reversed on appeal. Does the minister think that if the facts were repeated today, the cabin boy's human rights to life would still triumph those of the starving crew? The tone of Baroness Vere's response contained an element of alarm in the unexpected dark turn of the debate had taken, and certainly showed a little of Mackenzie's affectionate reverence for the important but ancient pillars of common law. Oh, my lords, with modern standards of lifeboat and search and rescue, I would very much hope that such a situation would not arise today. The shipwrecked seafarers would be rescued long before any decision would need to be taken on who to eat. Modern-day search and rescue services are equipped with an astonishing range of technologies that aid both in alerting and rescuing service that there's an issue in the locating of persons in distress or potential distress. The debate then moved on to Baroness Vere's presumed relief when Lord Berkeley asked about the government's policy on mariners' rights to broadband internet while on the boarding ship. So they went from cannibalism to internet?
In a blink of an eye.
Gosh, if you haven't had a chance to watch, some of the British parliamentary things, it is quite entertaining, and it's amazing how another democracy, English speaking, can be so different from ours. Because they tend to be rowdier, I think. There's a lot of harumphing and yelling at each other and grandstanding, which almost makes me say that, the more boisterous you are, the less, it's like, the dog with the biggest bark has the smallest teeth type of situation. How could we not cover it when you talked about cannibalism? The yacht was crushed. Okay, so here's a little bit more details down below. Despite the difficult conditions, however, it's unlikely anyone is going to need to draw lots aside who to eat and starvation. The case of R.V. Dudley and Stephens occurred when a 4-man scratch crew attempted to sail a newly purchased 52-foot yacht from Migonet, which was designed mainly for inshore use, over 15,000 miles from Southampton, UK to Sydney in Australia for its new Australian owner. The yacht was crushed by a wave in the middle of the South Atlantic, and the 4-man crew was forced to take a 13-foot lifeboat with no fresh water and only 2 tins of turnips to sustain them. Now, this is in the 1800s, but I'm thinking turnips is not the primary item I would want in tins. After 19 days without rescue and with the cabin boy, 17-year-old Richard Parker, said to have been in a coma after drinking seawater, Captain Tom Dudley and mate Edwin Stevens decided to kill and eat him. 5 days later, the lifeboat was rescued by German ship Montezuma, which is kind of a telling name in itself, and 3 remaining crew of the Migonet that were returned to Falmouth in the UK, where they were arrested and charged with murder. Despite claiming they had been abiding by an established custom of the sea and having considerable public support, Dudley and Stevens were found guilty of murder and sentenced to death. The case established a precedent in common law that necessity was not a defense for murder. But this having been established, the sentence of 2 men was then commuted to 6 months imprisonment, and both were later released. And then they're basically saying that that's impossible to happen today because of technology.
Yeah, you believe that?
No, not one bit.
Absolutely not.
Technology, you can still get lost and people not find you.
Absolutely. And besides, I think he went overboard and drowned, is my understanding. Why would you have told somebody you ate the other guy? Why wouldn't you say he drowned and we threw him overboard?
I I don't know. I maybe they weren't as pessimistic as we are, or they thought they were in the right. But yeah, what? So the moral of the story is, if you eat somebody, you kind of have to pretend it didn't happen. I don't know what happened to him. He wasn't on the boat when we got there.
That's what I'm saying.
Ignore that big chicken leg in the fire.
That's just a drumstick there.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, what if they had waited for him to die in another day or two? Would it have been the same issue? No, because then he was dead.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, like those soccer players, wasn't it?
Yeah.
In that aviation disaster down in South America,
Yeah.
and they
What?
partook of the crew. They didn't kill anybody; they just ate the bodies.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, survival. I mean, the moral of the story here is you've got to survive. Now,
Yeah.
The
issue is killing him for that, as opposed to letting him die and then eating him.
So let's say it was they were all equally alive. You know, he hadn't drank the water. He wasn't in a coma. He was just there. I mean, the two big guys go look at the little guy and go, you know what? I think I can take him. That, I think, would definitely be murder. Because but I'm not going to say that, you know, if you're hungry enough and other things that you wouldn't do it. Because, I mean, you can be innocent and dead, or you can be guilty and alive. So, I think there's a whole bunch of people who say they don't want to be on the dive boat with me now. So let's just.
Well, I take a look at you, myself, a few of the divers in the club, and we can live a long time on you.
Well, you could, but I think I can outlast you. I mean, I think the skinny guy's going first.
Well, that means if you're looking for natural causes.
Yes. Now, I can't run as fast probably as the skinny guy. So whether it's me chasing him or him chasing me, I think I come out on the losing side of that. So.
But it does, the other aspect of this, it does bring up the aspect they were talking about 200,000 sailors on stranded ships, don't have a way to get home, not getting paid a lot of times because of COVID.
Well, yeah, and
that's a heck of a problem.
Well, and that's a side thing, and that's just there are some laws and rules that are just pretty rough. Because I have seen, well, I don't say I've personally seen it, but I've read on it just this last year where there's a vessel, it's been contracted to deliver something to a port. When you get to the port, they're saying you came from company X last, and they've got the COVID. We're not letting you in. And then
that happened out on the California coast.
Yeah,
those ships are out there for weeks before they could come in, if at all.
Yeah.
I don't know how they resolved that.
Well, there were some ships that were going port to port to port and weren't being let in. And you know, you're on a contract for a specific amount of time, and the contract gets done. And then I read something, and this is completely squirrel moment, but there was a vessel that was pretty much abandoned, and there was some law of the sea that somebody had to stay on. So they had somebody who had been, the court of the country had dictated that this gentleman, who was just like a lower crew member, had to stay in the boat. He was on the boat for years. I need to find that. If I come across it, we'll cover that in another podcast. But that was a kind of a crazy moment there. So how about beer? Treasure inside beer lost in a shipwreck 120 years ago. And this is one you were talking about before we got on it. And those bottles, I agree with you, those are not as old a bottles as those look newer than 120 years ago.
Yeah, they look crown tops. They don't look like glob tops by any stretch. But I was looking at the bottom of them, and the pommel markings are the way you can look at them look like wine bottles.
Yeah, because you could see them, and I don't think. Let me see. I don't think. Can I make? Can I do interact here?
And I don't see any corks. Do you?
No, I'm not seeing any corks. This almost looks like they're empties. When,
Yeah.
and I don't know if this is clip art and that somebody just kind of grabbed this, but it's in. They would not be stacked like this, would you think? Because they would normally, you wouldn't transport bottles all loose in a hold. You would have them in some sort of crate or container, I would think. I don't know
If
how.
it, if it rotated upside down.
Oh well, yeah. I mean, if if it was a bad day, a super bad day, then yeah, that's going to be that way. So long forgotten yeast strains are being sought out from shipwrecks, abandoned breweries, and other locations that hope that they could be put to good use if resurrected. And I'm not going to read this article. It's going to be in the show notes. You can go through it. So there's a nice bottle there. I mean, that would be a corker, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that's not like a crown top. The other ones definitely look like crown tops.
Yeah. Yeah, see,
And that
I'm
was impact
I'm
because you
seeing
can see
some
the
crown
bottom.
tops, and I'm also seeing some almost like a twist tops.
Yeah. And if you look at the bottom of the bottle there, it's that hit something, so that rotated.
Yeah, yeah. But the article goes on that they're looking for yeast, and there's different type of yeast, and they go into a bunch of foreign names that I can't pronounce. Now look at that seal on there. That says
Now,
Glasgow.
yeah, I'm looking at that. I went down and saw that bottle.
Yeah, and that's
Now
you
that's
can
interesting.
and you can see that was almost like a champagne, where you can see it's kind of got that wire. There's like in a champagne, when you take the foil off, and then
Hmm.
you've got that nest of wire that's holding the top on. And I wouldn't think that you'd be using that for beer. But I mean, I'm by no means an expert of 17th century beers either.
Huh.
Yeah. But they're talking about different cultures of yeast that they've got, and they were kind of surprised in some of the results. And there's about somebody filling some beer. Uh, yeah.
That was interesting. I looked the ship up. Interesting looking vessel,
Mm-hmm.
and it has some. I went to Scottish shipwrecks to take a look at it. Have some different pictures of both the boat and on the bottom, and some of the other material they got off of it. And she's only 30 meters down.
Only 30 meters. Wow.
Yeah, the wreck of the wreck upright on the muddy sea bottom at 34 meters. Her bow point approximately north. Average depth over the wreck is 30 meters.
Yeah, and they
It talked a gash on the collision on the starboard bow was clearly visible. A large fishing net entangled in part of the wreck. And you don't want to get tangled in it if you're diving, they talked about. It said it had 3 holes, each of which is deep with silt, although some interesting items or cargo have been recovered from these holes. The remains of the foremast lie across the middle hole. The raised bridge deck, housed the captain's quarters, provided access to the engine and boiler rooms. The funnel has disappeared, but provides an interesting entry to the engine room, as it's possible to swim down through the remains of the funnel and aft below deck level. The rear deck had 3 more holes after the engine room. Lie the remains of the cargo of stannous chloride in earthenware jars. Each jar carries the inscription Richard Smith Acid Maker, Glasgow, which tells me I would not be opening that one in my car or around my body.
no.
The corks are inscribed with the name of the maker, E.C. Edmonds. The covered stern houses emergency sleeping gear, toilet, and store. Wreck lies close to Westmas Bay and the ferry route. So good boat cover with a clearly A flag, the alpha flag, if you're going to be diving it. So it sounds like people have been diving that for a while.
Yeah. So they still had some bottles that were sealed up enough that they could get some samples out of it then.
Yeah.
So people have been on that for quite a bit. So I don't know if that was just saying how many bottles there were, or people are fairly respectful of the contents.
Well, I'm looking at a different part of that where they had some other bottles they brought up, divers brought up. The seals are really, oh, wow. I just saw some other bottles that look pretty neat. Tall neck ones look like more than beer, look like liquor. The coloration, a couple of these bottles, the liquid is clear, not clear, but there's no particulate in it. The level is right at the shoulder of the bottle. The seal on this one is absolutely good. So, yeah, you might be tempted to want to drink some of that stuff.
Yeah, maybe. Everything's good till you smell it, and it smells like sewer water. That would be it. Yeah, I'll talk a big game, but I don't know if I'm drinking that.
That's an interesting wreck.
Yeah. Well, Mac, remind me.
I'd send you a little item. Let's see here real quick. I did a little send to whoever can see that.
Yeah.
Well, that was a hell of a big note. That's where I was looking a minute ago.
Mm-hmm.
Had diver pictures on it and all that. It is encrusted with tons and tons of, look like coral, algae, seaweed, and it was a little dark. And most of the pictures I saw with the divers, they were wearing doubles.
So you said it was only 30 feet, or is it 30 meters?
30 meters.
So 30 meters, you're still in recreational range, but you don't have a lot of bottom time.
Yeah.
So you're going to want to have either rebreathers and some mixed gas, or, doubles, because you're going to have some deco if you're down there much more than a few minutes. Well, how about this?
I do know if the muddies were down there, there'd be a lot less bottles there. I can guarantee you that.
Yeah, maybe we'd have a bottle just like this one. So how about for our last one, and I think we've covered this before. This is some in the potentially cool scuba gear area. iBubble automated marine drone follows and films a diver's every move. The iBubble is made by French startup Natolio Plus and promises trail divers as they inspect marine life, come snorkel to nose with a fish, and pursue work restoring damaged coral. Just this week, Australian ecotourism operator Passions for Paradise announced that it is using iBubble drones to capture essential data about the evolving state of the Great Barrier Reef section its divers and working to restore. Video and photos of the area surveyed are part of reporting requirements, thus allow us to complete recording of the activities that we can edit into an exciting social media content. We log the data of the corals, the marine life we see during the surveys, so that changes in reef conditions are reported immediately. Now, you don't need a drone for that. The divers could have cameras themselves.
Or drop cameras.
Right, a drop camera. The iBubble also marked for consumer use through a $29.99 per unit. Prospective clients would need to be ardent scuba snorkelers or scuba fans to get their money's worth. $3,000 for somebody to take photos of you. How many dives would you have to do to get that to a reasonable amount? You could hire a photographer to travel with you. Most people don't dive that often. So I'm kind of wondering who is this for at $3,000? Once in the water, the iBubble trails the divers automatically using radio feed from a smart bracelet, the wrist straps, and contain controllers. Because I know that through what I've done with artificial intelligence and vision. that you certainly could do that. But I was thinking once you get to low vis, the drone's going, I don't see you. I can't figure out where you are. But it sounds like they're doing a radio frequency for it to go on. You can set it to do commands of follow, 360, zoom in and out, change its 7 filming modes. Its internal sonar device picks up sounding obstacles, prevent collisions, can descend to a maximum depth of 196 feet. So that's at about 80 meters, 90 meters there. Battery life is about 90 minutes, which the iBubble automatically floats to the surface. An LED light facilitates location if it drifts off. Batteries are designed to be easily replaced for extended outings. A tether option allows a drone to be piloted from the surface while feeding video back to controller. Now that would be interesting because I could see a need for that. We talked about doing live at the beginning of the show. That's kind of what I'm looking to do. The first version will be just a static camera that a diver would either mount on them or carry with them. But I could see the value of having a drone that would do it.
Yeah, I just went to the iBubble site. I was looking both at the tethered one with the wire and how you can eyeball it with your iPhone.
Yeah. In the past 5 months, we've done 60 surveys, almost 200 hours of research, planted more than 700 pieces of coral. In the future, we hope to use it to analyze coral growth and locate reef. See, he's talking about it's trying to do two things, but it's more expensive than what you would need to do either thing. You can either do a drop camera, a camera a diver has, or a drone, and you can get separate devices for those that are all less than $3,000. Now, a commercial drone could be more than this, but most of the ones that just do what you need to do could handle it. So, yeah, this is from a website called Drone DJ. I don't know if they're making any money on it. I know we've covered this one before. So see, is this video going to be compelling enough to get somebody to buy this? It says first underwater autonomous, which no, it's not. See, I'm trying to think if you have it. I mean, is it? Oh, so you've got a remote, so you must be able to change the settings on the remote. Because that's what I was also wondering is if you had all those modes, do you have to do it in advance? But it must have enough of a picking up a signal to be able to change that out. So, okay.
I was thinking of another application.
Yeah.
One is you could actually video yourself as an instructor or a good buddy with another dive partner, mentoring, and then let them, after they did the dive, come back to surface, explain to you how they felt the dive went, and then critique it using the video. A lot of times now they're talking about don't touch the bottom, don't stir up the bottom with your knees or your fins, don't touch anything. Use that for a critiquing tool.
Well, I think for a critiquing tool, I also could see if I'm going to sell a resort course where you're going to come down to name your tropical location and you're going to go 0 to certified in the course of a week, I would think that you could charge more for your overall training if you included this edited video of the dives. It's
like every time you do a tandem dive, if you're only going to do one, you get a video.
Yeah. Oh, you're talking about for aviation.
Well, yeah, but then it applies to that. If you're going to do something very infrequently, having a picture like that, you're going to sell it to some people, especially my first dive.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's a case for that. That you're going to have to be creative, and $3,000 for a commercial operation who's clearing way more than that. I mean, at work, we talk about adding features, but if people won't pay for the feature, then it's it either has to get you business you wouldn't have had, or they're willing to pay more for it. So if you can't do either of those, it's hard to justify it. But yeah, I mean, I'd certainly want one, but there's a lot of things I'm going to spend $3,000 on before it would be that.
Yeah. Well,
Well,
since you're basically out of items,
yep,
I'm going to take you back a little bit.
okay.
Remember we were talking about that lawsuit of Linda Rose Mills back from November the 1st in Montana when she drowned?
Yeah,
The parents were suing for $12 million.
yes.
Well, I've been trying to keep up on that just for the heck of it, and I'm going to send you a link real quick.
Okay.
Bingo, right there. The Attorney General won't file charges in the Glacier Park scuba accident. Now, if I were the guy, I'd be glad to see this. And here's the verbiage. The U.S. Attorney's Office of Montana has declined to press criminal charges against the dive instructor who was involved in an incident where a Missoula woman drowned at Glacier National Park, Lake McDonald. Rose Mill, 18, was with a group near the dock at Lake McDonald Lodge when Mills ran into problems and drowned. On June 10th, 2021, the U.S. Attorney General's office informed the National Park Service Special Agent Curtis, who investigated the case, they would not prosecute the dive instructor, Deborah Snow of Missoula, for criminal endangerment in the matter. As we discussed, it appears Snow was negligent, perhaps grossly so, in several respects. But specifically, the investigation indicates Snow did not ensure Mills had a functional dry suit with appropriately placed weights. She failed to continually supervise Mills during the dive, the letter states. However, Snow's negligence does not rise to the point of being criminal. Snow reported she had, Snow reported she had no specific concern about Mills being able to successfully complete the dive, and Snow still did not know what had gone wrong. Medical examiner conducted Mills' autopsy, determined she died due to asphyxia by drowning. The witness statements and the video from the incident shed some light on the events of the drowning, but we cannot establish that it was Snow's knowing conduct that caused her death. Accordingly, we are declining criminal prosecution of Deborah Snow, letter signed by the U.S. Attorney General, blah, blah, blah. Well, in one aspect, if you're being sued and then this comes up, I wonder how that's going to affect the other part of the lawsuit.
Yeah. So the crux of the matter lies in the dry suit itself. The suit claims because it didn't have a power inflator which would allow Mills to inflate the suit as she descended into water. She also didn't have a proper weight belt. Instead, they put weight in her pockets. The question to me, knowing a little bit about diving, is did she have enough dumpable weight to counter? I mean, if you put 4 pounds in somebody's pockets, but they can dump the rest of their weight and they're going to be buoyant with the 4 pounds in their pockets, then that's...
With the BC inflated? Absolutely.
Right.
The key item, they said 44 pounds of weights that could not be released. I would be curious about why you could not release them from your BC. I know of no BC we currently use that does not have dumpable weights.
Well,
and you're not going to put 44 pounds in the pockets.
No, if you think of what, I've like when I dive in a wetsuit with a dive belt, a 10-pound weight's pretty big, and if you picture 4 of those, I mean that's a lot. You can't just tuck those in pockets. Those have to have a. Could you put 44? I don't know, my BC, because I've got pockets in the front of the BC that are droppable, and then I got 2 droppable in the back. I think I would have to really work to get 44 pounds in that BC. That might be something to try out just to see if you could do it. Because it may be. I mean, I
can get 44 pounds in mine, but I start dumping my 2 pouches. That's 20 pounds going right off the bat.
Yeah.
And my BC will pull me up. I got a 45-pound BC.
Yeah. Did they say how big she was? I'm trying to think of why she needed 44
I'm looking at the picture.
Pounds.
She does not, dry suit.
Yeah, I mean, if you've
got... They load you down.
Yeah, if you've got a lot of undergarment, a really high loft, is that what they call that? Where you've got all the insulation, then yeah, I could see it. Yeah.
Again, don't you have to say the lady with 5 dives has some responsibility for herself?
Yeah. So she only did they say that she only had 5 dives?
Yeah.
Because when we did it before, I thought they were implying that she had more than that. But I guess if you
Well,
just
she would have had to if she did open water to begin with.
yeah, because yeah, you're gonna get your open water, and she was in advance. But then she also sounded like she had done some tropical dives.
Yeah,
So
my understanding she did 3 tropical dives.
okay. So let's see, open water. I guess can you get maybe 2 dives in for open water and then 3 in tropical? Yeah. Um. Yeah. As an instructor, you're hovering around somebody with 5 dives.
Yeah,
I'm thinking.
we do. We don't have anybody with 5 dives.
Well,
Even with more,
and
we mother those suckers.
we are not instructors. We are not dive instructors, but until you get 20 is still extremely green. 50 is you're still a rookie, but you're getting there until you get over 100. And it's the quality of dives. There are some people you see, like my dive buddy Jim Kleeman. He was twice the diver in half the dives that I was. It took me a little longer just to get the muscle memory to figure things out, the task load, the everything. And he was just a natural at it, and I wasn't so much. I mean, at 10 dives, I was kind of even thinking, is this something I want to keep doing? But he was really into it.
I don't understand in the recovery effort. They said Snow dove after miles, found her in 127 feet of water, and had to remove the teen's air tanks and other weights to bring her to the surface.
We'll move the air tanks. Why?
If the air, does that mean they moved the BC? Because that's connected to your tank.
Yeah, that doesn't that in itself. I mean, I would certainly. I mean, if I was benevolent dictator and judge, not U.S. judge, but my own fantasy universe where I'm all powerful, uh, I am certainly going to give it to the instructor to find out what the heck they were thinking and doing, because there's a lot of stuff that doesn't ring 100% right. But you also have responsibility as a diver, even with only 5 dives, to save yourself. But that would certainly be a question I'd be asking: is so to get her up, you had to remove her BC. You couldn't dump the weight, because that would be telling if they said, well, no, because how the weight was on there, we couldn't get, because the thing in there, and if I was the prosecuting attorney, I would certainly want to know, was it following best practices, and could you dump all the weight you had to be positively buoyant? And if
I'd also be curious, did she inflate the BC? Was it functional?
yes,
Because that would have been my first thing. I'm going down, and inflate your BC. You're coming up.
yeah, the dive suit not having an inflator on isn't the reason you can't be buoyant, because
Right. It's going to be painful.
yes, yeah, it's not most comfortable. It's not the best insulating, but and the thing is that this gives cold water diving kind of a bad rep. If this is all people think about it, is hey, this, because she did have her open water, and at open water, you're allowed to make your own decisions. The advance is just to get you some more experience.
I'd like to see the video.
Yeah. I wonder if the jury's going to see the video.
I would imagine they would. I mean, because my first question would be, did the inflator work? Did the BC work?
Could you see?
And obviously with 5 dives, you're going to know how that works.
Was a diver trying to do things in the proper spots of when they should have been doing it? Or is this something where early on they panicked? What should all be, I say should be visible. We don't know. This sounds like it was a action camera mounted on another diver's rig. So you may only be seeing very close-up spots.
Yeah. Well, it said Mills did her first successful dive to 15 feet. We heard about that one because one of the other individuals got cold. They got out. And then she went down to 60 feet, and that's when she started having issues. So I'm curious how that first dive to 15 feet went. Because that's where you're going to realize, am I heavy? Can I get back up?
Mm-hmm.
Did your BC work? That kind of stuff. But I'm going to see where this takes us because I just want to see how this resolves itself. Not resolves, but what really happened.
Yeah, yeah. The chat room is saying if the BC had to be removed as it didn't have the lift to bring her back, then there's a very big problem for the instructors. And I would agree with that. I mean,
if the BC had to be removed, wouldn't you think you could remove the weights first?
well, and right. I would think so. Because even if the weights weren't droppable, taking the weights out would allow you to inflate it. Or
You
is
could
this,
inflate it with it.
would there be another reason? Because at this point, the person's has expired. And did they say what was the time between when they recovered the body and the incident?
It was a second dive. The
Second
guy had
dive.
to go down to find her.
Second dive. So at that point, there's no hope of really bringing her
It's
back.
right.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know if it was just, did he do that because it was easier to maneuver her, and that it's the attorneys who are saying, well, she couldn't get up with the stuff on.
If you inflated the BC, wouldn't that be easier to move the person?
I would think so. It's almost like a dive bag, a lift bag.
Can you imagine bringing somebody up with no gear and a dry suit by yourself?
No, hey, you're right. I would rather take them up in the inflated BC.
I'm just saying, let's say the BC didn't work. You would have a chore, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Because you're going to be bringing yourself up plus another 100 pounds plus 44 pounds of lead. How did your BC work?
Yeah.
All speculative. It'd be interesting to see where this goes.
Yeah.
I will try to track it because I am interested in that.
So that does it for Scuba in the News. For not having many articles, we were able to make that last a little bit. So, but it's 500 again. We'll bring that up again. I should have had a one of those little zingers and a cowbell and everything else. But
Woo-hoo!
yeah,
And confetti.
we'll make this. We'll do a virtual 500 when we do something. I was thinking by this time, damn pandemic, that we would do like a live location event, something like that. So diving, I did not get any diving, but I have been seeing that the Mud Club has been very active in the Facebook. I'm not on Facebook that much, but when I do come in, there's a lot of activity. I'm seeing a lot of new divers. Is that something you're seeing as well?
I'm seeing a lot of divers from Michigan ask about where can I dive, what can I do here. So they're looking. It's a good buddy mix, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Who's diving where? I'm just moving to the state. Where's a good place to go diving? We can't answer all the questions, but since we've got 850, 900 people facilitating that,
Yeah.
That's a lot of good input.
Yep.
I mean, people are asking questions. I'm having trouble equalizing. How do I, make that work? You're getting a lot of tutelage from people who have been there, done that, and had the same problem.
Yeah. Yeah. A veteran diver is a good source. I mean, that's why we call you the dive mentor. I mean, I was kind of thinking as we were coming up this episode, that was what Jim Kleeman and I noticed right away, was that you were great at taking the new divers and making sure that they were able to get into different bodies of water. I mean, because part of it is just confidence to know that you can dive in the area and what can be done, and that's great to have those resources. So
You don't have to go deep to have a good dive.
No,
and the more you dive, even like I said, 1 inch you can drown.
Yeah.
Over your nose. So if you get that comfort level at 10, 15 feet, why not use it? And once you go down that thermocline, that's your next one. Get them used to, see how cold it is? Come up 2-3 feet. Wow, it's warmer. I mean, I've had dives where I've had somebody up and their hands down, or down and their hands up in the thermocline, keeping their hands warm.
Yeah.
At Lake Cora. It's like, what?
Yeah. Well,
It's
many of my favorite dives are shallow dives. The only reason to go deep is because there's something that you need to see or experience there that you can't do shallow. But other than that, I mean, if I could do all my dives at 10 feet, I'd be happy with that. There's nothing about I don't have any desire to spend all my dives at 125 or more. But if I'm going to want to see a shipwreck that's unique, like what's the one down there in New Buffalo?
Muskegon.
No, I'm thinking what was the not Hennepin, uh, Heinz. Oh, I'll think of it later on. Yeah, great for a podcast not to know the name of the wreck. But there's one down there that was recently discovered about 10 years ago, with a mast still stepped. Oh wow,
The Hume?
Hume. That's it, Thomas Hume.
That's not a shallow wreck.
No, well, that's what I'm saying. That would be one that I would say that's one of the wrecks where I've been going, you know what, I need to get the technical, a little bit more technical training to go and do that one because I want to see that.
Right.
But
You got to have a reason to go deep.
yeah, but I wouldn't just go and say I'm a daredevil. I just want to go and do deco. You know, who wants to hang on a line for an hour, read a soggy wet novel or something as you're doing your deco obligation.
Well, we're a little different too. I think if you're saltwater and you're in where your visibility is increased,
Yeah, if you
you're
can,
going to go deeper because the comfort level. If you're down 90 feet and you can look up and see the boat,
oh yeah,
psychologically, it's totally different than if you're 90 feet down and you can see 15 feet above you.
yeah.
Total different environment
Well,
psychologically.
when I was down in Mexico, there was warnings on many of the wrecks. Was that this is a deep wreck? They said that people would go out from the shore, they would snorkel, they would see this wreck, get their scuba gear, and then dive down to it, and the wreck's at 210 feet. You know, if you're thinking that because you can see it, it's at 80 or 90.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're just not prepared for how deep you have to go. So there was quite a few that were people got in trouble, or we've over the years we've done those articles, and it's been somebody doing a dive on a wall, drift dive along a wall.
Yep.
And before they know it, they're down at 130 feet. If you didn't plan for the air consumption at that depths, before you realize it, you've used up all your air.
Right. And not watching your gear or your pressure gauge.
And here, let me kick Discord again. Darn it. I may have to. I like the idea of Discord being in there. I may have to use a different tool. I just cannot handle that it goes object. So here we've got Derek and Eric in the chat room. And like I said, the chat room's got better conversations than we do. 150 feet to the dirt, great wreck. I'm not sure what he was talking about there. And they're talking about using your oral inflators. So back to the diving. We're seeing people doing diving all over, and in the Mud Club, they're talking about dives this weekend again. I think they're looking for people for Saturday and Sunday.
Well, Lake 16 seemed to be a nice place to go. A lot of people are going there.
Oh yeah, the Hume.
Up north is where Kevin and Amy are going and diving a good bit.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's number one. That's where the wrecks are.
Yeah.
All right, me, I'm a grubber. I hit the rivers and local lakes.
Yeah. I love me a good wreck dive, and I know that's not grammatically correct, but I love a wreck. I mean, to go and see a wreck. I'm not much into wreck penetration, but just to see the wreck and to see the vessel, and then there's just something about it's like you're touching time. It's like you're bridging today to something that was 150 years ago, and you think about the people that were on it when it went down, people who had been on it, people who had maybe seen it from shore at port the week before. There's just something about relating with history that we go into old buildings. We've got buildings here in town, 150, 200 years old. You go into Europe, and they're going 400 to 1,000 years old on a building. I don't know why that doesn't hit me the same as a wreck. Maybe it's because there's only been a couple dozen people on some of these wrecks.
And I think the wrecks, though, are more entertaining back, well, when we dove wrecks 30 years ago, we didn't have zebra and quaggas. You saw a wreck. You could see it. And when you looked in the books, it looked like the books.
Mm-hmm.
You go nowadays, or at least 5 years ago, when it's infested with zebra and quagga, it disguised the whole body of the wreck, especially if it was a rubble wreck.
Yeah.
The Havana looks nothing like it did 45 years ago. I mean, when you see a pristine deadeye on the railings, totally different than seeing one now totally engrossed in
yeah.
quagga and zebra. It ain't the same.
It looks like something from a horror movie, honestly. There's this whole growth on it. The alien pods that are going to come out and suck to your face mask is what it appears like. I bet it does. Now when you dive a wreck, there's maybe the name board that every diver goes down and clears the mussels off of. I'd like to come back this year. Gosh, I got so much going on this summer, but I'd like to get back on Max Wreck. I'd like to get back on Rockaway, Havana, because I like going back year after year and see what changed. What boards have been shown that weren't there before?
Yeah.
What are the mussels less than they had been? Can we see the cable? Can we see the anchor? Can we see what's going on? And like we talked about previous week, there's a couple wrecks where the moorings have moved. How did the moorings move? So yeah, it's time to get out diving. I brought I'm getting my gear organized. I'm getting some stuff set up. This year's really kind of a reset year for me, unfortunately. You would think during the pandemic I'd have been able to get everything, but there's just something sucking about the pandemic. Not only did it suck, but it just took the energy out. When really what I should have been doing is, building things and getting things organized. It was just kind of like everything sat there because, and the thing is, if you knew the pandemic could honestly be a year and a half, I was convinced the whole time during the pandemic that we were 2 weeks out from it all being done. The whole time. That something would have happened, that it would have fizzled out, because we've had SARS 2 and we had MERS, and there was a lot of these. We had the hog flu in the 70s where they tried to kill everybody. There's been a bunch of these that have happened, and it was like, what was to indicate that COVID was going to be any different?
Yeah.
So, yeah. But Michigan, this week, we're unlocked. No restrictions unless you're a teacher or in nursing homes. So go out there and get wet. That's kind of been our tagline when you get to the end of the show, but that's what we got to do. Life's too short. Need to get out there and enjoy it.
And do it safely, of course.
Yeah. Speaking of that, do you have a dive safety story for this week?
Well, actually, I do. It's called Point of No Return. Monotony turns deadly for an instructor who breaks the rules. Steve was bored. He remained thankful for the opportunity to teach people about scuba diving, but he couldn't help but feel making the same dives over and over was getting dull. He needed to do something to spice things up for his own entertainment. The two divers in his care were doing fine, but they kicked up some silt on the bottom. He decided to make an object lesson out of the situation and have them wait for the silt to clear. It would take a minute to go look at that cavern again. The diver. Steve was a 40-year-old certified dive instructor, been teaching for 2 years, progressed quickly up to the leadership ranks, meeting the minimum number of dives and taking the next course. Even though he stayed physically active, diving nearly every weekend during the season, He ate poorly and was overweight. The dive. Steve and his two students showed up at their local lake at 8 o'clock on Saturday morning. Students were working on their advanced dive certifications, and Steve had 3 dives planned. They started the dive to 110 feet for their deep dive experience. The dive was uneventful, but dark and cold. Steve also led his students on a brief excursion to a cavern system during the dive. The opening to the cavern started at 90 feet. During the surface interval, the 2 students changed their tanks, but Steve didn't. After waiting 45 minutes and logging their dives, they began their second dive at 11 a.m. They planned to descend to 60 feet, but end up settling on the bottom closer to 85 feet. The students kneeled out on the bottom and stirred up silt. Steve signaled to his students to stay put and then swam away. The students believed they were being tested, so they obediently remained in place. When Steve did not return after 5 minutes, one of the students swam around briefly to look for him. With no sign of Steve, the students ended the dive. They made a safety stop, as planned, before exiting the water. When the students returned to the surface, they waited 20 minutes, then called for help. The accident. A search team immediately began looking for Steve, but it was the next day before recovering his body. During the dive, he had ventured inside the cavern area, continuing to what would be considered a cave passage. Rescue divers found his body on the bottom between some rocks. Steve had made the dive with no lines, was found out of air with a dead dive light. The coroner ruled his death of the drowning. Now, the analysis. It's easy to go careless when you do the same thing over and over again. Feels like you're going on autopilot and don't really have to pay attention to what you're doing. This is exactly the point you get into trouble. In this situation, Steve's students were certified divers. They could technically take care of themselves, although we don't really know how much experience they had. Of their experience level, as the instructor in the situation, his obligation was to stay with the students, see them safely through, and back to the surface of their dive. Instructors are taught specific methods and techniques on how to teach the class. The standards are essentially set in stone. Violating those standards is a sure way to get in trouble. Accidents don't happen every time somebody violates a standard, but they do. And when they do, the instructor's liable. It's likely the instructor's liability insurance would decline to cover the cost of an accident. Steve violated standards on the first dive by taking untrained, unprepared students into a cavern system. Now, a cavern system or cave is no more than 130 linear feet from the surface, and you can always see the outside light. Even then, divers each carry primary and backup light when entering a cavern system, giving them 3 light sources. Cavern divers also secure a line to the outside of the cave system and take it with them so they can find their way out, even though they should be able to see the light of the entry point. Steve didn't do any of that. Often caverns expand deeper into the cave systems, and when they go beyond that 130 linear feet of direct line of sight, they should have had certain items like redundant lights, a reel, a secure line to find your way back out. There's no way to understand why Steve did not change tanks between the dive. He might have been distracted and forgotten to do so. If he forgot to, didn't he look at his pressure gauge any time during his dive? There is no one dedicated to help the instructor perform a buddy check. It's also possible Steve chose not to switch out the tanks on purpose. Often instructors use significantly less air than their students, giving them the ability to do 2 dives on a single tank and save money on tank fills. Considering the depth of the first dive by the miscalculations of the second dive, this was a mistake, a dangerous mistake. Even though the students were certified divers, leaving them on the bottom in the silt while he swam away to revisit a cavern system was a mistake and serious violation of dive standards, not to mention common sense. Entering the cave alone with nearly an empty tank, no cave reel, and only one light spells disaster for Steve. Lessons for life: do not enter a cave or cavern system or any overhead environment without the proper equipment and training. Perform a buddy check to make sure you're ready for the dive. Instructors, don't get lax with teaching and your teaching standards. Those rules are put in place for a reason. If you're bored, do something to charge up your routine. Make time for some pleasure dives to remind yourself why you love the sport. Just don't get careless with students.
All good points. So,
It's beyond me why he did not look at his air gauge.
that's something you've got to do. To me, if I'm not, I check it too often, and there'll be every moment, and it usually happens when you see something. There's something about seeing, like if you went down to look at an item or you found something interesting you weren't expecting, and that takes your focus. And after a few seconds on that focus, it's kind of like that little sense in the back of your mind saying, "What's your air?"
Yeah.
and you look and you're like, "Oh, well, that's where I thought it should be." And there's nothing scarier when you look and you're expecting to see 1,500 pounds and you see 800, and you're like, "Well, what happened there?"
And depend on your depth.
Yeah, what did I do? Is it because I'm too deep? Is it because I've got a leak? Is it
Yeah.
because I was distracted that long?
Sometimes that's why we have to be careful, because we do a lot of shallow work.
Yeah.
We can get by, and we do, in fact,
Mm-hmm.
by waiting to surface till 500 pounds.
Yeah.
Because we're talking 20 feet.
Yeah. Well, or there's times when we're grubbing near the shore, you can stand up and you're out of the water.
Right. And or where we have emptied a tank in the dive for that same reason, that we're working 5, 8 feet, and
Yeah.
we're on the shore side we want to be. We've exhausted the tank.
Yeah. But
Will that get us in trouble on a wreck dive?
oh, certainly.
Not me. I'll guarantee you. I am cognizant of my freaking air every time I get in the water on a wreck dive.
Yeah. But if
And
if your goal is to breathe out a tank on a wreck
but my
dive,
goal on a wreck dive is not to do that.
no, that's why I come up with 1,000 pounds at least. Well, depending on the wreck. I mean, if I'm on Ann Arbor number 5 or Ironsides and we're down at 120 feet or what's that in meters, 30 meters or so. I know I don't have a lot of time on there. So
Yeah.
by the time you get down, you should already be thinking about coming up.
And by the other token on those, I never, and I don't believe you ever dive it without a bailout.
No, I don't. Early on, I did dives without a bailout at that depth. And you had to make up with extra time, but that extra time doesn't make up for you have a catastrophic event. I mean, if you have a free flow, and if you got to plan for the worst. If you're down at 125 feet and you have a free flow, you're going to be challenged to get up and not be in trouble.
Yeah.
And that's what that bailout gives you. That bailout gives you a little bit of cushion to be able to handle that event.
And a buddy.
Yeah.
Having a buddy there who's got air, who doesn't have a free flow, who probably has a bailout same as you do, you know you've got air to get to the surface.
Yeah. And think about that. If you're diving with a buddy, you really need to be thinking, not only do I have a reserve air for myself, but for him. If you go a little bit extra thinking that you're going to, well, I know I've got this.
Yeah.
You got to plan for what if his doesn't go through. I mean,
I can remember dives doing something stupid like that. Up at the Mackinac, wreck dive, deeper than 100 feet,
mm-hmm.
with a bailout, diving with 2 people I do not know. They got separated, or I got separated from them. I'm looking for them, cannot find them. I go to the anchor rope, or the rope back to the surface, and I'm waiting. And I've got 1,000 pounds. and I'm waiting, and they don't show up. Now, I still got my bailout to go, but when I surfaced, I basically didn't have any air in the tank because I
Wow.
had my bailout. They're on the freaking boat. They're in the aft end of the boat, decided they had enough time and did a free ascent without the rope.
Yeah.
And it's like, it would have been nice to know that they were going to do something like
Yeah.
that.
Well, and I think about that. There are times where we're diving on wrecks, and we're pretty much a collection of solo divers on a lot of
Yes.
stuff.
Yep.
But I do try to look for somebody who's down there when I'm going up, because maybe we dove solo and we're all going each direction. But when I see him, I'm going to signal saying, I am going up.
Oh, yeah. I always make sure somebody knows where I'm at.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Because a lot of times, I frequently am diving with Bob and Kurt. And, and what makes it even tougher is you got Bob, who's a rebreather, who
Yeah.
he goes down first, comes up last. And then,
And we've talked about that. How
Yeah.
do you track a rebreather when everybody's on the surface?
yeah, that's about the only time I've been scared for another diver is not knowing where a rebreather diver is. And we had talked about before the dive how long he was going to be down, and he went that and then some.
And you got no surface bubbles.
No, you can't track. I mean, our open circuit divers, I'm like, okay, where there he is. If he's breathing, he's alive.
Yeah.
Yeah. If when you die, and there's no bubbles coming up, then I mean, I guess you could have bubbles coming up and be dead, but typically, you can tell by the bubble pattern that that's a respiratory breathe in, breathe out pattern coming up. But that rebreather diver, unless he's diving with a flag or floating something up, we don't know.
The other item I think most of us do, though, even when we do the Havana, good at visibility, I always have a line
Yes.
from the anchor line to the wreck and wherever I go on the wreck. And more likely than not, I'll turn around and Kurt would be on my aft, my six, because he's just like me. He wants to know, where do I get back to that wreck if I'm doing a perimeter check?
Yeah, and that's not a weakness. That's just it's more comfortable.
Oh,
It's
no.
a safety thing. If you've got a line back to the anchor, that's improved quality of dive. That lets
Well,
you go and see what you want to see and know that you can use a reasonable amount of air and get back to that line going up.
and even on Max Wreck, I do that because you can kick the silt up on that really
Oh,
quick.
I
That's
have
like when Bob anchors on it, he puts a strobe at 10 feet off the bottom on the line,
that is a great
put the
stroke.
extra tank with the regulator, at 70 feet. That's a godsend having that there all the time.
Oh yeah.
Even though it's 70, I still take my baby barrel out.
Mhm. Oh yeah, yeah. That's that. I love that wreck when we throw the 80 down there in the bottom for anybody. So we got that
Yep.
tank there on the line. Bob with his when you dive with Bob on his boat, he's got a strobe that he puts down with the anchor. So
Yep.
you've got that. That's just a nice little. It's like a little security blanket, snuggle blanket there. Just a little. You can see it in the back of your mind. And Max Wreck usually, it's not the biggest wreck, but I have dove on it 2 or 3 times, or you cannot see more than 5 feet. I have done a free ascent on Max Wreck twice, where because I couldn't find my way back to the line, which is saying something on that vessel. Yeah, I'm anxious to get back out to that one again.
How many times have you been on your boat though, and everybody's up, everybody's done, and the anchor snagged? Who goes down to get the anchor, and how much air do they have? Generally, they take a leftover tank, go straight down there to get the anchor and come back.
Yep.
Now, is that the safest thing we should be doing? Because we've all done it.
I mean, probably not the safest, but it depends how much air. If there's 1,000 pounds in that tank and we're going down 70 feet, it depends on the person. It's like, okay, it snagged. So you already know that anchor is in a situation, so it meant that it's caught up in something.
Yep.
If you can trust the person going down, and they look at it and they go, "I'm going to sacrifice the anchor," because it's all you want to do. Because where it can happen, you get a little bit of surface current, you get a little bit of breeze going, you got some wave action. You've now really wedged that Danforth anchor into the wreck. A single diver is not going to get that up. So if you're going down, looking and going, you know what, it's staying there.
You got to know when to say no.
Yeah, if you go down and then decide that I am going to he-man that or he-woman that and try and get that out, that's when trouble is coming to you. And you could be a statistic. So that's where that comes into play. But I think I would not have, if I know, because mode 1 is inspection, just to be able to say, hey, yeah, it's caught up. And then you have to intelligently and with some experience know that I can get that done. So I would not put a rookie down there. And just because it's a partially used tank doesn't mean you can't follow the rule of thirds and have your safety margin for coming up.
Yeah, the other aspect is you can always leave it down there because you know where it's at.
Yeah,
and it ain't going nowhere.
Yeah, it's until the next guy comes
it
and
the
picks
next
it up, and then usually it's a hazing thing where they'll be harassing you, going, "Oh, you gotta look at this anchor."
Yeah.
I mean, how many people in the dive club have anchor gardens? So, even if you can't find it, you can usually beg for an anchor off one of your fellow dive buddies.
I have 15 anchors in the hangar. 15.
Yeah,
I've been giving them away.
yeah, anchors. I mean, it's kind of like it's a joke. I mean, there are anchors we have found I didn't even know those were a type of anchors. And then how many anchors we have which are, electric motors or cement pails. It's amazing what people turn into anchors.
We don't bring them up anymore.
Yeah. So, that's a good point. Thank you for bringing that up. So do you have anything you want to plug before we get out of here?
Nope. We did have the first Mud Club meeting in person this month, which was phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
We had really good attendance. We were able to have, if you wanted it, separation, because we did it in the lobby of the Benton Harbor Airport, which was really large and open and good ventilation, which was nice having. We are now in the process of debating on T-shirts. Karen took the helm on that one, and we've got some to look at and to say, okay, this is what we want to do. We want to modify it. Then that'll be brought before the board, and we're going to have some new T-shirts.
Yeah. Thank you to Karen for doing
big
that.
Time.
Yeah, and I agree with the comments. I like the design because what she did, she got with somebody who doesn't know the club, who's got a T-shirt store and did a design. I do think the design's a little busy. It's kind of hard to look at it because I think with a nice T-shirt design, because I want something, it's like flying the colors.
Yeah,
it's like
that's what we got.
You've got the logo on the front. If somebody's walking behind you, they're like, "Oh, what are you doing?" That's what it should be. And it had a little too many fonts, a little too many colors. I can appreciate the wreck, but I think was it John or maybe Kevin? Last comment was, just do the information around it and have the diver. I mean, that's.
Yeah, I think Ted mentioned that, and so did Jim. He said if we take the shipwreck, either leave the shipwreck or the diver, one or the other, but don't have them both.
Yeah.
It got too busy.
It's hard to tell. And they tried to stylize it because we've got the design you can pull from the website or from the Facebook page. I mean, there's really that logo. And they had stylized it, which it's nice to see somebody took some effort. If you're going to make some money out selling us T-shirt, they went and kind of did a stylized design of what they did. But yeah, it's a little much. Sometimes less is more.
Yep. I think that'll work out, so we should have those coming. Then if we can work on getting some new hats, because we definitely need them.
Well, hats are the tough one because they're expensive. And please, no white. As a guy who's dirty, and a white hat, who can wear a white hat?
I have a white hat. I use it for dress when we go to the dive
Well,
shows.
right. Yeah,
That's
it's
the only time. And it's not going to be on the boat. And it
yeah.
ain't going to be out there when I'm cutting the grass.
Yeah. Here, let me show you. This is my favorite dive hat. And oops, let me get in front of the camera here. And it is, you can see there, I can't wear it anymore. I mean, there's there's stuff in
It looks
there.
like your suit.
Yeah, it's like
Oh,
my dive suit. This is my favorite hat. And look at it. It's a dive flag, and you probably can't see it in the camera, but right up here it says, you know, scuba diver. I mean, that's all I want. Somebody sees me
no,
wearing that out, they know I'm a scuba diver, and it keeps my head from burning because I've got this, all this luscious mane that can't survive any other way. That's what I want. And the same thing for the dive club. If I had something I could wear more than once, if you do white, because here's what I do is I got it on my head. I got a white bill. What have my hands been doing all day? And I go touch the hat, and now there's a big fingerprint. That's done. And the same thing with tennis shoes. You see people walking around with white tennis shoes. I'm like, what is that about? Are you advertising that you do no functional work in your life?
hey, as soon as you mow the lawn with it, it's green. Come on.
Oh gosh, yeah. No, I've got a pair of. So here's my current dilemma: is that my lawn mowing shoes hurt my feet to the point to where they're almost crippling, but my next worst pair of tennis shoes are too clean to wear mowing the lawn. So I usually I like migrate them down, and I haven't done it yet, but I need to.
Now, this is a thing that's going to lead you in your diving stuff. You know you need to do something, yet you're failing to do that when you know that's the right choice.
Yep.
Trash those
Yeah.
shoes, buddy.
The trash the
Trash those
shoes.
shoes.
Yeah, maybe I'll post it on Facebook. I'll do the Darrin lawn mowing shoes and have them out
And by
there.
the way, your suit, as porous as it is, would be adequate for lake diving, or at least Lake Michigan, or
Yeah,
in the shallows.
yeah.
Number line's about 15 feet right now.
You know that dive. I bought that wetsuit on my first dive. I think I bought that before I did my first dive. Did I rent a wetsuit? I'm trying to remember. Maybe it was my third dive, but that is how long I've had that wetsuit. Now I probably dove as many dry suit dives in a dry suit as I have in the wetsuit, but yeah, it should be replaced. But it keeps me warm when the water temperature's 75.
Okay, yeah. Otherwise, I don't know how you do that. I don't.
I well, gosh, it's been pre-pandemic, but I dove without a wetsuit on the clay banks down there off New Buffalo, and I thought I wouldn't be able to do that. But it was one of those, and long-time listeners have probably heard that story. But that was a case of, I left my fins, my boots. I mean, I left just about. Yeah, I guess I had my tanks and my BC is about all I had. But I went and dove on that, and even in July in Lake Michigan, you get below that thermocline, it's a little chilly.
Now, and not to pick on you here,
Yeah.
but I have a diver gear checkoff I use every time before I do a dive.
There was no.
Isn't that part of pre-planning to do your dive correctly?
Yeah.
Is to have a list like that to go through? You're setting yourself up for failure somewhere down the road.
Well, I have the checkoff list before I go do a dive. I just didn't have it for getting my gear. Yeah. Well, kind of like the podcast. I need one for the podcast because, here I was all day getting everything all ready, and it's functional. I got the desk. I got everything. More to come. So thank you everybody for listening. Again, if you can do the Patreon, go on our website, click on the Patreon link. We certainly appreciate that. Now the pandemic is getting over with. We got more opportunity, more things to do. Watch the YouTube channel. If you can, even if you listen to the podcast, take some time, go to the YouTube, give us a like, help us out there, subscribe, because that's kind of where, we have to transition. We're not going to stop doing the podcast. We're going to keep making content that is for a podcast, but we're also going to have content that's specific to video. And we really need to make that transition. I think that's what we kind of need to do. There are people who want single topics, focused topic instead of what we do in the podcast. And we're going to start doing that coming up here. So, and we appreciate you. I mean, 500 episodes, we wouldn't have done 500 if we didn't have people listening. As much as this is therapeutic and I enjoy it, there's other things I can do. I don't need to do this, but we certainly appreciate. We thank every one of our listeners for enjoying it, and we know that's changed over time. The funny thing about the podcast is that we have more listeners when it's winter, and then
you can't get out.
Right in the winter, we can have a couple thousand people on an episode. So, as much as I'd like this to be a larger number, I think this is pretty reasonable. I think most people lie about their numbers. So this is, what you're seeing here is some of the real numbers that we have. It's saying 445 listeners for the last episode over 28 days. Well, it's not over 28 days. We just released the episode earlier this week. So we usually have 1,000 listeners within the first week, 2,000 listeners within the first month. All episodes downloaded over the 28 days, the 5,000. The back content is a big driver to the podcast. A lot of people listen to back content. I've heard from many people who they may not listen every week, but when they go on a dive trip, they'll turn us on in some of the other podcast episodes. In fact, that's something I need to do is review the other podcast episodes. There's a lot of podcasts that have just started up in the last 2 years, and some of them are pretty good. I haven't heard them, but people I trust who have listened to them have said they're good. I just don't have time. I got time to do this and then some of the critical business-related stuff. But, so there's some of it. But what I really like when I go, let's take a look at analytics, is just from where all our listeners are throughout the world. So let's take a look at the locations, and I am going to go in here.
I'm going to let you continue that. I'll be right back.
Okay, no problem. So I am going to go in here, and unfortunately it looks a little bit better when I view. I've got this cropped down for streaming, but here, here's the audiences. United States, and this is from the last episode. We got United States is number 1, Australia, then Canada, and then UK. So English speaking. Ireland, which is also English speaking. Canada, China. I'm kind of surprised to see them up at the top. We have Slovenia, Sweden, Denmark, and Netherlands. Germany, unknown. You know who you are, but we don't. France, South America, New Zealand, Switzerland, Thailand, Greece, Romania, Italy. Let's see, we'll throw a few more in here. Italy, Malta, Taiwan, Trinidad and Tobago, Slovenia, India, Spain, Estonia, Belgium, United Arab Emirates, Norway, Malaysia, Argentina, Singapore, Colombia, Russia, Japan, Bosnia, Herzegovina, Ukraine, Indonesia. Let's see, we got some more here. Nope, that's the end, and that's for just this last episode. So thank you very much. You're certainly appreciated. We, wherever you're listening, has been great, and we hope that, if it's not me or Mac, maybe it's somebody else. We'll do a Dread Pirates, and we'll try and keep the podcast going. So as long as you are listening and you're supporting the show, We'll try to make sure that somebody's still doing this. And we'll see you on the other side, because probably by the time you hear this episode, we'll be on a different platform. And we'll see what tools they have for us to do new things. So
I'm back.
you're back.
Sorry about that.
Not a problem. I mean, things like that happen. Let me get a drink of our non-branded big box retailer beverage. And then while we were doing this, I see that Eric had to go. So good night, Eric. Thank you for listening. We have Eric there. We've had some other of our regulars have been pretty busy with work, so they're not in. Oh, and then something before we get on. Do you see that, Mac? Right there.
Yes, I do.
There it is.
Looks iridescent.
Yeah. So, and then also, if you've got any dive videos, I'm running out of my stock footage. Mac, do you have any dive videos?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been meaning to send you some.
Yeah, if you could send me one or two, because I'm kind of reslicing some of the same ones, and it's kind of going to be an Easter egg, because I show them at the beginning of the end of the episodes, and I need some for $4.99 and $500. $4.99 I'm going to be editing tomorrow. $500 I may do over the weekend, or maybe even tomorrow, since I'm off again tomorrow. I'll go ahead and do it. So I'm stalling. Yeah, I really wish we had done something. So we're going to do a virtual 500 episode with something a little bit more exciting. What's that? What's the chat room saying now? These are dumpling squid making babies. Is that? Oh, okay. God, we're trying to get that NC-17 rating, I think is what we're going for. Tell your kids they're just hugging each other and being really friendly.
We went to the zoo.
Yeah. Oh.
There at Michigan City.
Yeah.
And it was during the summer. My wife and I looked around, and all the kids seemed to really amazed at the two turtles, and they were quite active. And the teacher was trying to not explain to them what was going on, because you're talking really elementary kids, way down first, second, third, maybe.
Well, and the problem is all the farm kids know exactly what's going on, and they're explaining it to the other ones.
Yeah.
And the teacher's like, I just don't need anybody to tell a parent about this. It's like, this did not happen. It's not here. Well, let's see if we can, we've called this the bad scuba joke. It's not so scuba. It's moderately bad. So let's see what we can get out of this. Are you ready, Mac?
I'm sitting down.
Let's see. Nope, not that one. Not that one. Okay, here we go. A scuba diver on a mountain trip falls down a crack. His wife calls after him. Are you okay? Yeah. Are you hurt? No. Not a scratch? How come? I'm not done falling yet. Yeah.
It's pretty calm.
Yeah. Let me see.
Well, it doesn't hurt until you do that sudden stop.
Yeah. And so here's one. And you being a military man, you may appreciate this one. I managed to lose my rifle while I was in the Army. I had to pay $855 to cover the loss. I'm starting to understand why Navy captains go down with the ship. Could you imagine? Well, let me see here. As I tap on a calculator, that'll be $3.2 billion, please. A wife goes to consult a psychiatrist about her husband. My husband is acting so weird. He drinks his coffee in the morning and then he goes and eats the mug. He only leaves the handle. The psychiatrist says, well, yes, that is weird. The handle's the best part. So is that a good one, or do we need to go another one?
You probably need to end it on something a little less chewy.
Chewy? Well, I'm going to say this one's probably not chewy, but I won't say any better. Little Red Riding Hood walks alone in the deep dark woods. Suddenly she hears rustling in the thick brush. Cautiously, she moves the branches aside and finds herself facing the big bad wolf. Oh, big bad wolf, why do you have such huge red eyes? Go away, I'm crapping.
I don't think that was any better.
That was any better? Let me see. I really didn't screen these too well. Hey, 500 episodes, you should know better. A husband and wife are having dinner at a nice restaurant. The woman drops some tomato sauce on her white top and says, "Oh no, I look like a pig." The man nods. He also dropped some tomato sauce on your shirt. Oh, do I need another one?
No, Grace. We need.
uh, Here's one. Okay. So this may be the last one for me, whether it's the last one for the podcast. My girlfriend asked me to tell her all my previous girlfriends chronologically from beginning to end. Okay, I probably should have finished when I got to her name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Captain Obvious would agree with that.
Is that 500 worthy? Is that really? Do I need to? I don't know. I mean, that's kind of where we go. No, I can't do that one. Mr. Smith, doctor, do you remember the strengthening solution you prescribed to me yesterday? Yes. What's the matter? I would like to use it, but I can't open the bottle. No, probably not that one. Here's one. I don't know if it's worthy of ending on, but it's funny. Daddy, what's an alcoholic? Well, do you see those 4 trees, son? An alcoholic would see 8 trees. Dad, there's only 2 trees.
We should stop while we're ahead.
Are we ahead? I'm not sure. Okay. I don't know how I'm going to edit this one. So until next time, go out there and get wet.
And stay safe.